we can also think about how do changes in your brain affect your visual perception. So one way to think about this more generally is that we can think about both bottom-up and top-down processing. So bottom-up processing is you're looking at something and your brain is like, what am I doing with this information? How am I going to make sense of this information? Top-down processing is your brain already has an idea, a conception, contextual knowledge, previous experience, and it is interpreting what it's getting from the visual field in light of what it already knows. So, we can think about changing your brain with practice and training, but our brains are changing all the time. We can change them actually in a second, just with new information. So we have another example of that, don't we, Sam?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're showing you something on the screen now. So take a look at the image we have on the screen, please. And so look at that. And so that looks like a bunch of dots. So it just looks like some dots. And so from bottom-up processing, the idea is we will just sort of like put those dots together and we will kind of perceive something, and that will help us view an object. But what some people in the audience right now may be seeing something more than dots. And if they are, it's probably because they've seen an image like this or this image before. But what we can do is we can change your brains in a way to essentially give you top-down processing forevermore from this point. So Paige, why didn't you go ahead and change the brains? All right, so now you see these dots, and they are now, this outline helps you organize those dots into the shape of a Dalmatian dog sniffing around on a winter's day or amongst some leaves, or whatever's going on, I'm not sure. But what happens is, even when we take that outline away, you can still see the dog. So your brain is now changed, right? You are now using your understanding, your understanding of the world, and you're organizing these using top-down processing. You're organizing the same dots that you were looking at before without perceiving anything. You now are perceiving a dog. Now this works in other contexts too. So look, here we are showing you some letters, and if we can all read together that first line, it says, of course, te chut. Doesn't it? Or is it the cat? If you look right on that first line, that middle letter is identical. Right? If you look at the shape of it, it's identical. Yet we all read that as the cat. Right? And we read it that way because we are using our knowledge of the English language and the combinations of words that tend to go together, that essentially that top-down information tells us how to interpret that middle letter. Is it an A? Is it an H? Look at the second line. What does that say? What does it say there? Right? Is it red or is it pfb? Right? That could be a PFB. Right? But we don't do it. So everyone will read that as red, but you'll probably read the next one below it as spot. But look, that first letter in red is identical to that second letter in spot in terms of the image it forms on your eye, right? Yet we are using our information about the world, our knowledge about the world, to interpret those things differently. That is top-down processing.
Just one more example of this. We can see this picture and it looks like a big monster is chasing a baby monster down the tunnel, right? That's the obvious perception of this image.
That's what it looks like.
We can draw lines for the heights of the monsters, and look, they're exactly the same size. So we see this not as two same-size monsters. We perceive it in terms of these pictorial depth cues, in terms of height, in the field of view, and we see this in terms of a whole narrative scene.
So these are some examples where we can use these illusions and these letters essentially to make silly mistakes. But what about the real world, right? Well, that's where this sort of perception is needed. So what we'd like to do now is we'd like to look at a short video that is essentially using top-down processing to make people perceive a piece of glass that isn't there. So this is from the 1962 version of Candid Camera, where you'll have people pretending to carry a piece of glass across a sheet. Let's roll across a street. Let's roll that video.
I must tell you that our staff seemed to enjoy this. Now, in these two approaching gentlemen, one of them was very brave, and he walked boldly right through our glass. The other man was cautious enough that he was actually backed right into the phone booth. In this modern age, it's really not surprising. Look at this. It's not surprising that people are a little wary about large sheets of glass because you do meet them in some of the strangest places. But we never dreamed we could chase people right off the sidewalk with them. Notice that even when he's bold enough to go through, he feels a little bit to make sure. Now this man trying to talk his way through the glass, you know, he said, "Get it out of the way." Now they hold it up for him, and as he leaves the scene, you'll notice that he sums it all up with a very eloquent shrug. Here's a very courageous woman. She waves a wand.
All right.
Sam and I joke about recreating this ourselves one day. One day we're actually going to do it. We're going to walk around campus.
If you see us on campus holding some glass, it's real.